About a year ago, back when I was still happy and optimistic about the future, I made a video talking about why a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1 might not necessarily be a good idea. I talked about how the writing would change, reflecting, contemporary political issues. I talked about how certain gameplay elements might be nerfed, how the level design might get fucked over, how the weapons sandbox might get ruined, how it might come out as a very different thing from the game that we know and love. Well, since then, there's been so many rumors about what Metal Gear game is getting remade and how and when and by who. Is it going to be exclusive to PS5? Is it going to come out on everything? And recently, it seems like the most likely candidate for a remake is going to be Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. And when I heard this, I realized this is so much more than just an opportunity to remake a game and make it better than it ever was, which is a pretty high bar for Snake Eater. This is a chance to reboot the entire Metal Gear series. So today, I'm Pliskin, and we're going to be talking about why a Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater remake, to be specific, is the perfect idea and is exactly what the franchise needs if it's to have a future. Now, before I or you get excited, or better yet, before I make you excited and hyped for the possibility of a Snake Eater remake, I think all of us that have been alive for the past 10 years of game releases should know better by now to stay not necessarily jaded, but cautious whenever we hear good news like this. So because of that, I'm going to start this conversation by talking about the things that I happen to be a little bit worried about. First thing would be the removal of a lot of extra features from the Snake Eater game. Now, anyone who's known the history of releases with Snake Eater knows that a lot of things end up getting cut. For example, in the original release of Snake Eater, you had this really cool dream sequence. You had Snake versus Monkey. You had like a secret theater that had all these like bonus skits and stuff like that did like comedy stuff. And all of that got cut out when they made the HD re-releases. Now, what I'm worried about is having further cuts being made, especially if this ends up being like a reboot to the series that's trying to, satisfy older fans, but then at the same time not exclude new fans. I'm worried stuff like the references to Metal Gear Solid 2 will get removed. The Rykov section with stealth, as well as the Raiden mask and the I like Metal Gear Solid 2 option when you start a new game in Snake Eater, where Snake will come down wearing Raiden's mask and give you a fake out, making players back in the day think, hey, I actually won't be able to play as Snake, god damn it. So I like those little things, and I'm worried that that might get removed. Another possibility is that certain features might get contorted and instead feature twisted microtransactions. Now you might be thinking, Pliskin, this is going to be a single player only game. How could they fuck this up with microtransactions? Do you guys remember the little I forget what they're called, the Gakko frogs? You know those little green dudes that you can find in every single part? Every single map in Snake Eater has one of these guys hiding out somewhere. Now in the game, if you manage to go about shooting all of these, I believe you got these stealth camo. However, I could totally see this kind of challenge and the rewards that come from this challenge being twisted in the sense of microtransactions, like Gakko frogs become some kind of currency to unlock cosmetic outfits or new guns or shit like that. I could totally see this happening, especially if Konami has anything to do with the game's development. So features we like might be contorted into something else entirely. Another thing, or maybe this is a little bit more personal on my end, but anyone that played Metal Gear Solid 5 noticed how the guns in the game weren't actually real guns. Now for me growing up, and then later on when I got into guns, one of the joys of the Metal Gear Solid franchise is seeing how it portrays a lot of weapons in a realistic manner that most games don't. Not necessarily in performance, but aesthetics and base-like ergonomic function. So I like that. I don't want to be playing Snake Eater and then instead of getting the M16, I get the MRS4. Like, I want us to go away from pseudo guns. It didn't work for Resident Evil 6. I don't really think... I mean, it worked well enough for Metal Gear Solid 5, but I don't want that to be a part of the series' future moving forward. Another thing I'm a little bit concerned about is the simplification of mechanics. Now, I, like everyone else, can agree that a lot of the controls in Snake Eater are extremely obtuse. To this day, after playing Snake Eater religiously since 2013 when I first discovered it, I still do the thing where I'm aiming, and because of the pressure controls, instead of shooting, I end up just putting the gun down and then I have to like aim and shoot again. That's annoying. If they want to make some quality of life improvements, make a more intuitive aiming system, make CQC a little bit more accessible, essentially step away from that idea of pressure controls, I'm totally fine with that. But this could go too far in the other direction, and what we might instead get is something like Snake Eater on the 3DS, where it plays more like Peace Walker rather than Snake Eater, and a lot of features or gameplay mechanics get removed for the sake of simplicity. I'd like to see these mechanics improved upon, but I genuinely am a little bit afraid that they might be simplified to the point where they're just dumbed down. This goes beyond just the basic control scheme as well. There are a lot of niche details within Snake Eater, the interactions with the environment and interactions with the enemies. Like, the sandbox really is the world. You hear that tagline with a lot of open world games, but in Snake Eater, it really rings true. For example, enemies have food and weapon shacks, and if you destroy those food and weapon shacks, enemies will be starving and they'll be equipped with weaker weapons. I like that level of interaction, and again, I don't want to see that oversimplified for the sake of making the game more approachable. So there's a lot that could be taken away here, and there is a lot to be worried about in terms of who's developing this and what does a remake really mean for this game. So I just wanted to bring all of this up to get you thinking, to keep you cautious and on your toes. So when they release the trailer and we're all crying and losing our minds, we don't neglect the necessary concerns that you as a consumer need to have in the modern gaming landscape. But I'm done being a downer. Let's start talking about all the things I'm excited about. Like I said before, this remake could be the new start, a new renaissance for Metal Gear as a series. If they started with Metal Gear Solid 1, for example, if they remade that game, all of the story beats would be connected to stuff that happened in Zanzibar Land, to Big Boss's storyline, to all of this. They would start off with all of this baggage. Whereas if they remake Snake Eater, this is a chance to start the series over. They could make Snake Eater take place in the 1980s and move the timeline up, or they could keep it in the 1960s and change certain story beats. They have a lot more freedom with what they can do while still keeping it feeling fresh and true to the franchise. So Snake Eater is the perfect place to start with a remake. One, because it comes chronologically first, so you don't have any baggage, and two, there's a lot more open expectations and ways that you could take the gameplay because of the solid foundation that was left with, the first original game that came out on PlayStation 2. For example, one of the changes that I'd like to see made in the story, and this is going to be a little confusing for a lot of people that watched my Metal Gear Solid 1 video and got pissed off at me for this. I went on a whole rant back in that video about how I didn't want to see any SJW bullshit making its way into Metal Gear Solid 1, and I used the whole situation with Meryl's ass and all that fun stuff there. However, and this is going to surprise a lot of people that got pissed off at me for saying that, I wouldn't mind if they toned down the sexualizing of Eva and the uncomfortable conversations that she and Snake have back and forth. It's supposed to come off as like cheesy and sexy, but in most cases it comes off as cringy. They're the kind of cutscenes that I skip to this day if a family member or friend walks into the room. So I'd like them to handle Eva's sexuality in a way that's more tactful, in a way that's more, I don't want to say mature because that makes me sound like a pretentious prick, but here I go. Mature, just in a way that, like, you know, you can have a character be sexy without things being awkward. And while I love a lot of what Kojima did with these games, if there's one thing he clearly never really got his grip over, it was handling the sexualization of characters. Just take a look at that one shower scene in Metal Gear Solid 5, which still makes me uncomfortable to this day. If you want to just have a romantic, steamy, sexy shower scene between Quiet and Snake, you can do that. But why do you need 3 dudes standing around the shower like catcalling Quiet while this is all happening? Likewise in Metal Gear Solid 3, just what is up with some of this dialogue between Eva and Snake? It's just so uncomfortable. So yeah, a lot of people might be surprised in that because I was talking about how I want, you know, keep the sexualization, keep this, you know, the raunchiness and the sexist comments that Snake makes in Metal Gear Solid 1. But here I am in Metal Gear Solid 3 arguing for the opposite. I think depending on the game, depending on the situation, depending on the characters, this kind of stuff can have a place. And in Snake Eater, I feel like the game would benefit by it being toned down. On that note, not necessarily just with the whole sexiness thing, but just with the writing in the story. Now, I've always felt that Metal Gear Solid 3 is trying to tell this impactful story where a man loses everything that's of value to him in the pursuit of patriotism, and it really shows how the military-industrial complex will take everything away from you and leave you as a bitter, hollow shell. But the writing never really matched up to the themes that this game is trying to tackle. The boss is a really good character, however, I don't know, I never got as into Metal Gear Solid 3's story as I did Metal Gear Solid 2. And I feel a large part of that is the writing. Some of the voice acting was a bit stiff and off. So if they could make changes there to make the story feel, you know, as epic and as hard-hitting as it was intended to be, especially if we're going to be bringing in newer, more casual audiences, I think the game would benefit, and not just the game, but the series would benefit greatly from that moving forward. Sandbox improvements. Now, I like Snake Eater Sandbox, but if you've watched my What's Wrong with Metal Gear Solid 4's Guns video, I have a whole segment in that talking about how Snake Eater has certain weapons in there that doesn't really have a place. For example, the Scorpion. Now, the Scorpion SMG is a cool gun in this game. It's the only one that has a laser sight for aiming, and there's a lot of really cool things that you could do with this. However, you only unlock it later on in the game, and you never really get enough ammo for it to really use it. I had one commenter mention how he uses it to like take out the missiles coming at you during like the Shagohad boss fight, but you could use the M63 and it works just as good, if not better, because you have more ammo. Now, I understand why it's in the game here, because if you destroy guard shacks, instead of having AKs, guards will come at you with Scorpions, so they do less damage, they have to reload more often, and it's a really good way to make the player feel like he's impacting the world. I've destroyed these sheds, now they have to use weaker weapons. Now they're a lot easier to fight if I get caught. But then when you're using it as a player, I feel like they really need to rework it and recontextualize its place in the usable sandbox. And a lot of other guns would benefit from this. How exactly they could do that? That might be a topic for another video. But for now, I just want to say one of the things I'd look forward to is tweaking to how some of these weapons work and hopefully making them better. Another gun, or the last gun I'll touch on, would be the 1911. I hate this pistol, and the game brings it up like it's supposed to be the best thing ever and yada yada yada. Then you realize, okay, if you don't hit a headshot with this thing here, you have to empty out like 2 mags into a guard's body to take him down. And at that point there, I'm just wondering, why not use the Hush Puppy to just knock them out? If I don't hit the head, then I just have to wait a couple seconds before they get knocked out anyways. Why use the 1911? I can give away my position so easily. So maybe balancing it in a way like Far Cry 3's 1911, where it's like a 3-shot kill to the body, would be better. Make this like a heavy hitter and then limit its range capacities. I'm not sure, but they really need to change up this 1911. They need to change up that Scorpion, and I promise I'm gonna stop now because this could become a video in of itself. Snake versus Monkey. I want Snake versus Monkey. If they can fit in that dream sequence, I want that weird dream sequence. Snake Eater is lacking in the bonus modes department. That's part of the reason why I love Metal Gear Solid 2, and I keep it above Snake Eater, is the fact that it has so much bonus content for me to keep coming back to. It's the best bang for your buck, and you get some wacky ass scenarios that go down in Metal Gear Solid 2's VR mode. Like a boss fight against Solidus as Solid Snake, or hell, there's even like a Meryl boss fight in there. A lot of crazy stuff. Snake Eater lacked that, especially in the releases that cut out that dream sequence in Snake vs. Monkey. So bring back Monkey, bring back the dream sequence, and if you can add bonus modes to this remake of Snake Eater, it would elevate its position within the series ranking forever, especially since this is already a fan favorite game. Adding extra bonus content to it would just make people love it even more. Now, if there's a last thing that I'm looking forward to, and this connects with the whole, making certain rewrites and changing certain characters' roles and all of this kind of stuff, I want my HD paramedic. I think the game focuses way too much on Eva, and I get that, but like this video if you think paramedic's best girl. I can't wait to see HD paramedic. This is going to be so fucking cool. Maybe change up the codec so we can appreciate the newer models of these characters like Sigint, the Major, and of course paramedic. But yeah, that's more of a personal thing I'm looking forward to. I can't wait to see Best Girl in HD graphics. So in conclusion, Snake Eater Remake has a lot of potential to be the greatest Metal Gear Solid game ever made, and it has potential to keep this series dead in the dirt like it already is. They really need to nail making this a game for all of us returning fans to come to, enjoy, and get a sense of something new out of it, while still making this something that can attract a whole new audience and introduce them to Metal Gear's story and reconstruct that story in a way that both audiences, old and new, can enjoy and be hopeful for more. We don't want more of this kind of Kojima trying to make every single Metal Gear game the last game, so he just fucks up the storyline so much so by the time you get to 5, all of these cassette tapes are so fucking confusing. No, we don't want that. Put this game in the hands of people that want to make more Metal Gear games. Make the story reflect that. Make something that everyone can enjoy. It's not too hard. This is one of the best games ever made. You just need to clean up the writing a little bit and polish up the graphics and mechanics. A lot can go wrong, but I'm ultimately optimistic. I think that this could be Metal Gear's fresh start. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Again, like this video if Paramedic is Best Girl, and I will see you guys in the next video. This has been Pliskin, over and out.